Hi, I'm Jeremy Crosby.
And I'm Nick Boucher. We're your hosts for the program that's all about your city, Talking Fitchburg.
Every weekday, we pull together the news, events, and information you need to stay on top of what's happening in the city of Fitchburg.
Find Talking Fitchburg on cable TV, Roku, Amazon Fire, Apple TV, and our live stream on the web. Plus, you can find all our headlines and stories on Facebook, YouTube, and our video on demand service. This is your city.
Keep up with Talking Fitchburg and the issues affecting you and your neighbors.
Want to know what's happening in your city? Get Notify Me messages from the City of Fitchburg. Visit fitchburgwi.gov on your computer or mobile device and select the big Notify Me button on the left. Enter your email and/or phone number, whichever is best for you to get notifications. Scroll down the list and select all the topics you're interested in to receive email or text messages about. You'll be notified every time one of your topics is updated. Sign up for Notify Me, one more way to keep up with your Fitchburg government.
It is 5:30 p.m. on December 1st, 2025. I'm calling to order this meeting of the Board of Public Works. With me tonight is, we've got 4 out of 5 here. Alder Herbst is remote on Zoom. Present in the room is Don Gutkowski, Dave Wilborn, and myself, Bill Jetzer. And we will jump into our agenda. Item number 2 is public appearances for non-agenda items. I don't believe we have anybody today. So we can move along to the approval of the November 17th minutes. Anybody want to make a motion?
I so move that we approve the November 17th minutes.
I'll second.
Thank you for that. Any discussion?
None.
All right. No discussion. So all in favor of the minutes as appearing in the packet, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Minutes are approved. Okay. Item number 4, Water Supply Service Area Plan and Addendum to the 2018 Water System Master Plan. Tim, do you want to give an introduction here?
Yes, we have Nate here from Strand Associates. Strand's been working on our water supply service area plan, and I'll kind of let Nate kind of get more into the details. But this plan is required by the state to be completed and submitted by the end of the year, so December 31st, 2025.
Great, thanks, Tim. Yeah, my name is Nate Iwanowski. I'm an engineer with Strand Associates. I'm also working on the city's project for the new well and new water tower, and so appreciate the opportunity to come here tonight to at least talk about the water supply service area plan. So the Wisconsin DNR put out this code, NR 854, regarding water supply service area plans about middle of the year last year. That said that, it establishes procedures and requirements for public water systems to follow, more or less to make sure that they have enough water supply for the current and for the future. It applies really to a group of population or a group of water systems, mostly by population of 10,000 or larger that either operate their own wells or surface water treatment plants. It really stemmed from when the Great Lakes Basin Compact was established. There was a little provision in there, but I think they really wanted it to encompass all systems throughout the state rather than just those that are taking water from the Great Lakes Basin. And just for everyone's reference, the city of Fitchburg does not draw from the Great Lakes Basin. However, the code still requires water systems within the state to have a similar plan. A specific requirement for some of the communities within the Great Lakes Basin, they do have to submit to the DNR to review and approve. Again, because the city is outside of that basin, they don't have to submit it. However, the DNR might want to ask to see that they met the requirement of preparing one. And so the only requirement was to prepare this plan, of which we are in the final draft mode, and we're here to present some of the findings today. So like Tim said, the preparation of the plan is due by the end of the year. We're definitely going to make that requirement. One of the sub-requirements of this plan to prepare the plan was also to have a public comment period. And so this meeting, after the presentation, will solicit any public comments or questions and that kind of thing. So using the Fitchburg Water System Master Plan to complete the Water Supply Service Area Plan, in 2018, a master plan, or really a grand plan for the water utility was prepared. We had helped the city prepare that, looked at all sorts of things to look for in the future. And so that was a good kind of leeway to addendamize it to complete this Water Supply Service Area Plan. And so the code came out again last year, requires the plan to be created and then be reviewed every 5 years. On the good news is the utility master plan that the city prepared in 2018. We recommend to have those updated every 20 years. That's the plan that the city was going to update it anyways, and so that's in a couple of years now. It doesn't really make sense to update it early, and so therefore it was determined to create an addendum to the existing plan with the intent that in a couple of years, when the greater master plan is updated, that these components will be incorporated to be a nice, smooth, one complete plan. And then just the last bullet point there, again, with that complete plan, it'll meet the Water Supply Service Area Plan requirements of 10 to 20 year projections and updates, similar to what we recommend for utility master plans. So they kind of meld together in a good way moving forward. Here's just an outline of some of the key elements that are within the Water Supply Service Area Plan. Again, a lot of these components are found in typical water system master plans, which the cities had most of them. There are a couple little niche areas that needed a little more definition and some more components. And it was a little outdated, right? 2018, that's 7 years ago now. A lot of the demand has changed. Some of the population throughout the city has changed. And so we took a brief look at that, again, just to meet the requirements. We didn't do a full in-depth review like we would do for a new water system master plan. That's going to be done in a couple of years. But again, we still met all the requirements. We looked at a planning period, delineating the service area, and so forth here. Most importantly, we are allowing the public to not only review the master plan that was prepared, but to look at all the Water Supply Service Area Plan requirements as well. And I believe a copy of that draft report was in the packet if you haven't reviewed that yet. So going into just a couple of the things that are within the service area plan. The current and future service area, again, one of the most important things of the plan, is shown in the map here that was originally found in the master plan. We took a look at the service area, again, with the city, and found that they were very similar to each other. The city is growing as it has planned, right? That's the whole purpose of planning, is to have something, but then reflect on how it looks as well. Light green is the current urban service area, whereas the dark green is the future growth boundary. You can see a lot of the growth happening on the east and southeast side of the city. Here's a schematic of the existing water system as it sits today, where the water system is divided into 3 pressure zones. There are several wells throughout the west and east pressure zone. Like I said, we're currently helping the city complete and install the new well 12. That's going to be used to supply the west pressure zone. A couple of the wells get shifted over to supply the east, and then eventually the northeast pressure zone, of which the new water tower, Tower D, is being constructed to supply. Part of that plan, or part of the project that we're also helping with, you can see that there's actually 2 water systems going on. There's the main system up top, there's the south system below. Part of this whole transition plan with the new well and the new tower is to combine the 2 systems into one nice and happy system, which is shown here in the future water system. The south zone goes away. A couple of the older shallow aquifer wells will be not used and demolished. The new well 12 will be online, the new Tower D will be online, and then more or less the only recommendation or the improvement that's recommended in the Water Supply Service Area Plan is a new well to be drilled and source the northeast pressure zone, such that each of the 3 pressure zones will have 2 wells for redundancy. So as part of the master plan and then subsequently the water supply service area plan, we took a look at supply and storage capacities just to make sure that there's enough supply and storage to meet current and future demands. Here are two summary tables for both the existing wells and their capacities and the towers and their storage capacities. We took a brief look at populations within the specific water service area. Not all citizens within the city are served by water, and so that was taken into consideration as we were looking at the area to be supplied by water. Not really a good graph to show the comparison of what was the old projections versus new, but I can promise you that the city was more or less growing on the path that it was planned back in 2018. And again, the 2030 and 2035 projections, again, are very similar to what they were 7 years ago when we were taking a look at it as well. We took all of these numbers into consideration to calculate a water service demand. And we're in year 2025. The city pumps about 2.4 million gallons per day out into the system. Projections show that in about 10 years, in 2035, the system will be pumping around 2.9 million gallons per day. So definitely an increase, but nothing too significant to, have to drill multiple wells and multiple storage tanks, Took a look at the different categories, which is part of the water supply service area plan, is to look at, okay, what is the residential usage, commercial, industrial usage? What type of usage is happening, right? You look at some of these other communities that have huge, data centers or industry coming in, that brings a lot of uncertainty, and you can have a wide range of various demands. Fitchburg, on the other hand, is a lot of residential demand. You can see in the furthest left column that the majority of the water usage is caused by residential. So a little more consistency there. Yes.
So in that top table where it says total population, does that mean total population being served by the water system or total city population?
That's a great question. I believe this was taken from the part of the report that should be population served by water.
Okay.
Not city. I mean, we did look at citywide trends as a whole, but this should be specifically water system population.
Just for context, the reason I ask is because the Wisconsin Department of Administration estimated that as of January this past year, 11 months ago, our total population was like 36,200. Mm-hmm. Over time, how has the rural population that's not being served changed? And I guess, is that factored into that table there, especially with like the Greenfield neighborhood plan?
Yeah, great question. So over time, within the past 7 years since the master plan, more or less, I think we assume that none has been added. I think we consistently subtracted the same amount of rural population that we did before. Not to say we can't do that. I mean, the grand scheme, that was a couple thousand people that we have been subtracting. Could we have just said, hey, everyone's going to join the water system and be conservative? We could have. And we could have taken a deeper dive into, okay, where is this rural population? Has it been added? That wasn't done. We just, again, assumed the same amount and subtracted that from the DOA projection for this year. We also took a look at when the town of Madison was dissolved and looking at that population, which is actually currently supplied by the city of Madison, right? So they're outside of the city of Fitchburg water supply service area. And so they were excluded, again, from this population when we're considering what the water supply population is.
Okay, and then I guess, do we even have to talk about this, given that in a couple of years we're going to update the water system master plan anyway?
More or less, yeah.
And Alder Herbst has a question. You're muted.
Piggybacking on your comment, we have kind of three sections of the city that are served by City of Madison. My neighborhood, Jamestown, a number of years ago, we made the decision to take water from Madison instead of spending a lot to rebuild a booster pump. Town of Madison and Rimrock. So we have three three areas where we're able to get water from Madison. Does Madison, in their capacity planning, I assume they're counting us? Or, is there a hole in the cheese here? Someone's not being counted? I'm just kind of curious. Jamestown, I would tell you, we're very happy with the water service from Madison. It improved our water pressure and things. We're much more consistent with Madison, but I'm just curious about the capacity planning aspect of the city.
It's a great question. We did not have any conversations with the city of Madison as part of this project. We could have. I would think.
Don't need to. Okay. I'm just curious. Yeah.
We didn't. I would imagine that the city of Madison has taken into account those areas. If they're currently serving those areas now, I would hope that they would have incorporated it, no matter how small.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Any other questions?
It's probably in line with that. Do all the plans in Dane County required to mesh so we're not missing anything, or maybe you don't know that?
I think it's a little gray. Again, these plans aren't required to be submitted to the DNR. That would be maybe a first stop, is the DNR would make sure that they're collaborated. It would be interesting, in subsequent years, after all of these are published, and should be shared, online to the public, that, okay, once they're all established, they've been vetted by communities, that, okay, next time this is updated in 5 years or when the master plan is done, let's take a look at City of Madison. Let's make sure that that's, published and incorporated.
In the plan, it identifies some shifting of this well to that well. And is there any watch areas we have to worry about? I noticed in one of the shifts, like the radium levels were significantly different. I don't know if that's a problem or not, or a watch issue, but are the plans supposed to identify that if we're approaching an area that's we should be doing some corrective action in the future?
Yeah, that's a good question, and that kind of opens up to just general all the projects going on related to the water system. Through our discussions with the city, there haven't been any quote watch items. We can go into the whole radium item, but the city plans to source all the water, which is one of the conclusions of this water supply service area plan. All the wells will be drilled into the same aquifer, should be pulling the same water. I know that kind of varies from spot to spot, and the area of high radium right now is at well 12, or I'm sorry, at well 13. I'm sorry, well 12, the new well that's being put in. That hasn't even been online yet. I think it's kind of hard or unfair to say, hey, this is going to have high radium when it hasn't really been put into use yet. I guess that could be a watch area. There is this one point in time that, okay, yeah, radium's a little higher, but still under the MCL, the maximum contaminant limit, and so it's still regulated. It's still fine to use as is. So we'll see once that goes online, and we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But nonetheless, the system throughout each of the three zones is pretty consistent. I think the city strives to have redundancy with 2 wells in each. Make sure that there's just enough storage, not too much storage that provides stagnant water anywhere. All sorts of things. So nothing that we have highlighted or red flagged in the report.
Have you done the Madison one?
Madison did their own.
Oh, they did?
Yep.
Okay. Because for some reason I had in my head that they were going to start tracking the PFAS, but I'm not sure.
I think they're working on it internally. It'd be interesting to see what they publish as part of that. I mean, they should touch on the water quality within their water supply service area plan. So,
thanks. Dave had a question.
Yeah, Alder Herbst.
Yeah, on the capacity, I remember when I first got on the board. Maybe Mr. Wilburn remembers this too. There were when we would get the proposals or the studies, the DNR was recommending really high storage. A storage component, almost like everyone have a tank in their backyard. I know they want more storage from the DNR standpoint. The more storage, the better. Be able to fight fires or withstand wells going down, things like that. But is Has that standard of the percent capacity of storage, has that remained consistent over the years?
It's a good question. I think in today's age, at least with my experience, and we went through this when we got permitted to construct the new water tower, Tower D, is the PSC, the Public Service Commission, has to also approve projects to make sure that communities aren't overspending on storage projects. And so from that perspective, they kind of incorporate these equations that make sure that you don't oversize a water tower. And so that they have a hand to make sure that water towers aren't too big. And so as part of that application process, we had to prove that, this new tower is sized appropriately just to both meet fire protection requirements, but yet not have enough to provide stagnant water and cost too much money. And so I think in today's age, there has to be a tight balance, and is permitted as such. Has that changed over time? I think so. I think it's changed over time, but I think today it's pretty tight.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. I think this next slide, we jump to some plan recommendations here. The table on the right shows an overall, there's a lot of numbers there, shows either a surplus or deficiency within firm supply. As is, because there's technically no well supplying the northeast zone, there obviously is a supply and storage deficit. There's no well, there's no tower there yet. With the new well being constructed, the new tower being constructed, that's going to help significantly. And so these close near-term projects are going to take away any sort of deficiency that would be on paper. The other recommendation to construct, this well 13, doesn't need to be done immediately. I think as the growth areas, like we looked at in the earlier slides, builds in that northeast zone, the need for another well is going to be needed. There's going to be plenty of storage, but because there's only going to be one large well in the northeast area, again, to build that redundancy, a new deep aquifer well, as we'll show in this next slide, is recommended. And the city has planned that. The new well 13 was in the original master plan back in 2018. It shows up here again in the water supply service area plan. And it just makes sense. The near-term plan, shifting one well into that northeast zone, will couple with one of the older shallow aquifer wells, which, we can get into nitrate discussions all we want. Still permitted to be used to feed, but to be consistent across the board, a new well 13 in that northeast zone should be needed to address a slight deficit by 2035. So you can look at some of the numbers here in the table. The two red ones, again, that's caused by just not having a well or storage tank in the zone right now. But then the furthest down number, that 801 in dark there, shows that there will be a surplus in that zone in 2035 with the new well. Another part of the 854 requirements was just to look at alternatives, just in general, right? Come up with a plan B, or make sure you're not overlooking something. And so took a look at everything that was, technically feasible for the city. This included surface water from the nearby lakes, which, I think that'd be a significant hurdle to even, dive deeper. And so, not to say we discounted it, but, everyone in the area uses wells. Nobody uses the lakes. Let's keep it that way, if that makes sense. So groundwater sources is the way to go. Deep wells, both deep wells and shallow aquifer wells, depending on where you are. Communities, neighboring communities may use more shallow wells. Some use more deep. Again, the majority of the city of Fitchburg's wells are the deep aquifer wells. Let's see, connections to other water utilities. We briefly talked about how, some of the areas of the city are supplied by the city of Madison. But, if you look at the question of, should the city be supplied entirely by the city of Madison? Well, city of Madison doesn't have any well capacity to do that. They'd have to drill more wells, and that just doesn't make sense. And so a lot of these options and alternatives were, just not feasible, right? It would cost too much money. It doesn't really make sense. City of Madison sources from the deep aquifer anyways, and so it'd be the same water, just piped miles away. So in conclusion, for the plan, additional deep wells are currently the best alternative for providing clean drinking water to the city. We currently use a mix of deep and shallow aquifers, but the current water source is treated groundwater, and it has historically and will be the best source moving forward. Just to summarize a couple of things here, so the 2018 master plan stated, additional well capacity is required, right? The city's following those plans. They're building a new well right now. They're building a new tower. They plan to build well 13 in the future to meet the 2035 demands. No other significant changes to the source water are anticipated, right? The water that's coming from the deep aquifer is good. Water levels have been consistent over time. Again, this water supply service area plan in the form of an addendum to the original plan is not intended to take place of the utility master plan. Again, when that cycle comes around to update the whole master plan, a deeper dive will be needed, and some of the components in this plan will be incorporated into the big master plan. And then similarly, updated demands and population projections will coincide with future comprehensive plan that I believe is coming up in a couple of years as well. And so findings from that comprehensive plan will be used to then be incorporated into the updated master plan. Appreciate everybody's time. I know we kind of got a little technical, but I would welcome any other questions or comments and any other public comment if there is any.
Do we have to account for that it's probably a legal ramification. What happens if City of Madison says, I don't no longer want to service Dave's area? Do we have to account for that?
I would think so.
Okay.
And that was, you can see in the service supply area plan, there's a lot of appendices that talk about whatever issues, there's an Oregon standpipe on city land. There's the agreement with City of Madison is in there. If their plan shows that, we would then want to incorporate that into the plan, showing, okay, City of Madison doesn't want to come to the table. That's not an alternative. Let's throw that in there for consideration. Definitely.
Dave, you had a question?
Yeah, go ahead, Dave.
Okay, is anyone in the region in discussing infiltration wells? Right now, basically, the water we pull out of the aquifer, that doesn't get that goes back in the sewage. It ends up essentially on a path down the Mississippi River, into the Yahara or in Stillwater Creek into the Rock River. Makes its way to Mississippi. Does anyone in the Midwest even look at trying to do injection wells or aquifer? I don't want to say restoration, but maintain the aquifer. I don't believe we've had a problem. I don't believe we've seen a substantial drop in the water column in our wells. But I'm just curious if you do this for a living, what you see coming possibly.
Yeah, that's a great question. We have offices throughout the Midwest, and so we get different tastes of different water issues. One of the big ones that is happening in Iowa, a couple of the communities there use aquifer storage recharge wells, ASR wells, of which you still pump all the water out of the well, you treat it, and then any excess water you then store back in the aquifer, and so that's all permitted through the Iowa DNR. And that is to help with the depletion of the Jordan aquifer that they have down in Iowa. There's very few of those wells. I think there used to be some in Wisconsin. There's a code that says you can have one, I guess, but I don't think there's any wells around there. What's most commonly seen, at least throughout the Great Lakes Midwest area, is when the aquifer goes bad. Instead of trying to do ASR wells or anything like that, is you connect to the greater Lake Michigan pipeline. We are working on a lot of projects right now that are supplying communities with pipelines that go miles and miles in. And although it seems very expensive, it's one of the next best source, right? And again, that's probably one of the reasons why this requirement came up is the Great Lakes Basin doesn't want that happening, right? They have permit restrictions and want to make sure that everyone has their own supply and that the Great Lakes isn't going to be used. So as far as putting treated wastewater down in there, I'd have to ask some people down in the southwestern area where there's water scarcity is a lot more common than up here. I wouldn't anticipate that happening here.
Yeah, we're blessed. We're blessed with a stable groundwater in our state.
We are. It's great.
I'd like to make a suggestion, not for this one, but in future ones, that we ask Verona and we ask Madison, what's your game plan here? Just to see if there's anything glaring, surprising we don't have. Now, this is a rather fundamental, and maybe it's dangerous even to ask, but outside of maybe a grant we're applying for, we have to have this in there. What happens if we do it every other year? We're finding, personally, we have no big risks out here to worry about. So if we do it every other year, is that going to save us money, or do we? I mean, if we don't have anything in the immediate near range to change or do or add. So if we do this every other year, we're tracking population pretty consistently. So
unless something significant changes, I wouldn't think you would need to do it every other year. I don't think there are any grants available to do it more common. I mean, to your previous point and comment that, once City of Madison and Verona publishes their plans and it shows something glaring, it might be worthwhile to pick this up in a year. After that, the master plans are really only done, 10 years because yes, things can kind of change, but unless something significant changes, you can kind of ride out a 10-year coast kind of thing. So it would be interesting to see how all these plans shake out, after this month ends and see what they have to say. But
so is that your call, Tim, or is it the alder's call to decide we don't want to do this every year?
Well, this plan will be done every 5 years, correct, Nate?
Update, yeah.
An update every 5 years, and then the city historically has updated the master plan every 10 years. So we'd kind of like to keep to that cycle. So it'd be done this 5 years and then 10 years, the master plan.
Okay.
Nate, the city's sustainability plan that was recently passed calls for a 6% drop in water use and a 6% drop in wastewater generation as well. Can you comment on, we're adding these wells, we're adding capacity and storage. The sustainability plan is calling for a decrease in water usage, even in the face of increasing population. Any thoughts?
Yeah, that's a great question. One of the requirements of this water supply service area plan is to make sure that components like that and other regional plans are considered. Something as far as water use reduction, I mean, we take a look at historical water use and take the historical to project it out. Do we consider, what a 6% decrease would look like? I think we could. I think that's a goal. I think it's in today's age where water use is already at almost an all-time low. I think it's great to have goals and it's great to reduce water. Could we have played out a scenario where, there's a lower line that showed a 6% decrease? I think we could have. I think things like that could be more, more fit for the master plan effort than just this water supply service area, which looks more at, okay, where are you taking water from? What are your rough guesses at usage? That kind of thing. Not to say we can't take a quick look, but just looking at the numbers here, I don't think it would necessarily change any of the recommendations that would come out of it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I saw that we have, you know, on a per capita basis, we seem to be reducing our water usage over the recent years. And I was just wondering, you know, if you had any thoughts on how realistic the the goal in the sustainability plan is. Did you actually look at it or no?
I didn't look at the sustainability plan.
Okay.
Nope.
Alder Herbst.
Just one comment. You know, ever since I've lived here and continues, we have excellent water quality. You know, the shallow old system, you know, that was put in by that's a little different story, but you know, the majority of our system fed by our deep wells, and we have excellent water quality. You know, we have problems like sand or, you know, some things have happened to us, but if we look at the contaminants in it, you know, even, you know, that I don't think you find any well anywhere maybe that doesn't have a little bit of radium, but it's below the value. And I suspect if you'd leave your water in a pitcher, that might evaporate out anyway. But you know, I think we're very fortunate to have such good water that tastes very good. Also, you know, we don't have a chemical taste to our water. You know, I'm very, very happy with the quality of the water. You know, we're much more fortunate than many places. Just think of Flint, Michigan, and realize how fortunate we are.
Any other questions?
But the math on when we're doing this. So every 10 years we do a new plan. Every 5 we're doing an update plan. Is that what I heard?
For this,
For the NR 854.
yes, for the water system master plan every 10 years. So that's what the city last did in 2018. So that'll be updated, as Nate mentioned, in 2028, around that time frame. And then this, since this is being completed in 2025, would be updated in 2030.
Okay.
As required by the state.
Okay. Thank you.
Would there be any advantage to try and sync up those?
Because, yeah, merge the two. Yeah, and that's something we can, I'll speak to Tracy about that to see if that's something she's looked into or if that is possible. I know the two plans are slightly different with some of the requirements of what the state requires for their plan versus what the city's done. But I don't, Nate, have you guys talked about maybe getting the two on the same cycle?
Yeah, not super specifically. I would anticipate that they would merge into one report and then would be on the same cycle, such that this one report would be redone every 10 years, but then an update maybe every 5 years to meet the water supply service area plan. And you know, the requirements for updating, again, are more or less just to verify that, again, none of those big red flag things have changed. You know, you don't necessarily have to remake population projections every 5 years. It's really just to make sure, you know, your sources are still there, nothing significant has changed. And so yeah, I would anticipate that whenever the master plan is due for an update, this water supply service area plan content would get incorporated and or updated, and then go on a 5-year cycle to either update or redo.
Okay, looks like we're out of questions. So Nate, you are officially off the hook.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to 4B, the public hearing. I see no one in chambers. Scott, do we have anybody online for comment? Nobody online either, so we can skip past. And we are on item number 5, the report from the Director of Public Works, Mr. Tim Volker, PE.
Thank you. I think I'll start with the snow removal that we had this past weekend. Alder Jetzer had sent me a couple emails to kind of discuss, one earlier in the week talking about the alternate parking, and then kind of also tonight with the bus stop removals. So I think I'll start with just the bus stop removals. So the city has about 97 stops within the city. That includes concrete pads, shelters, and if it's a grass terrace. And we do remove snow from all bus stops. We may miss a couple from time to time. So if you happen to see, or if a resident happens to see it's still snow covered, just, they could shoot me an email, Mark, anyone in Public Works, and we can get that addressed.
Should like the general residents of the city use the report a concern function on the website for that?
Yeah, they could do that, or, even call us, and, we can get that. That might be a little faster. It is call or an email. I think, we're pretty, when those means of communication come in, we're pretty responsive to that. So with the snow removal this past weekend, Public Works staff started snow removal operations starting Saturday morning at 9:30 a.m. and we worked 10 and a half hours till about 8 p.m. on Saturday. The crews then went home to get some rest and sleep, and then they came back in on the morning on Sunday morning at 3:30 a.m. and they worked another 10 and a half hours till approximately 2 p.m. on Sunday. So with the bus stop removal, snow operations, to get the crews back home and some more rest, working 21 hours over a holiday weekend, I made the call to have the bus stop removal start on Monday morning. So the crews came back in at 6:30 a.m. They still had some snow removal on the streets to do. So our alternate side parking ends at 7 a.m. And typically what happens, they'll come in, start their shift at 6:30 and go to those locations that they saw the previous day and quick remove whatever cars were parked the previous day in those spots. They'll hit that before 7 a.m. on that morning. So they did that first thing this morning. Then around 8:30 a.m. hit the bus stops and were able to do the snow removal for the bus stops in today's shift. So with bus stops, we kind of have multiple teams working on it. There'd be 2 crews with a loader to remove the snow from the stop and put it in the truck, and then we'll also send a couple crews out with some shovels to help shovel that. So like I mentioned, there's 97 stops throughout the city. Sometimes we miss them. We are human. So if you do come across a stop, we can get back, let us know, and we'll get back out there and clear it. I got a couple in today, it looks like, that we may have missed. So, first thing tomorrow, we'll be back out there to hit those. So Alder Jetzer, did you have, I guess, a couple questions? Just, is it possible to, with street removal, maybe the dead end streets and the cul-de-sacs, to hold off on plowing those to get to these bus stops sooner? Because, someone walking is more inconvenience versus maybe someone in a vehicle on those low volume streets. I guess it would be inefficient for us to do that. Just, we're in the plow truck and we want to hit the streets all at one time. So if we left like the cul-de-sacs, the dead end streets, we'd be, say we're up in Terra Vesa, or Southdale, the northeast part of the city, then we'd have to bring that truck all the way back to Fish Hatchery Road at our shop, and then kind of demobilize that and remobilize a wheel loader, a new truck, and crew with shovels to go, hit the bus stops. And then once they're done with that, come back to the shop, demobilize the wheel loader, get back into the snow plow truck to do the cul-de-sacs and the dead end streets. So it's more the resources we have. We only have a streets 9 crew, parks we have 2 people from Parks that help plow streets, so we actually have kind of 11 people out there plowing at one time, to hit all this 150 miles in the city with 9 people and then 97 bus stops. It's a lot, especially given 10 inches of snow. So there's only so much time before we can get to everything. So, we do have to prioritize. And if that's something we want to, discuss with our snow removal policy, that's something we can. I think another thing you mentioned in the park section of that policy was the ice rink being listed before multi-use pass. Yeah, I think that should be swapped.
Yeah, I was going to ask if park staff could assist with the bus stops and do some of that work at the same time as the roads are being cleared. Once the major and minor roads are cleared, then there's little chance that a plow is going to, put a bunch of snow back onto a bus stop.
Right. Yeah, and parks, they do have their own areas, so they're doing kind of the parking lots for the city. So City Hall, they're doing the 3 fire stations. They'll be doing the new police station. The kind of the emergency services, getting those plowed for them right away. Then Parks also has the bike pass, the multi-use pass throughout the city, any sidewalks, and then they also do the, I believe, crosswalks within the city. So like you had mentioned, so that they do have their own staff, but that is something we could look at. I do know, parks and streets do help each other out. Like if someone's out missing on FMLA or on vacation, that parks would step in to help with the plow routes and vice versa. So it kind of all depends on the storm and the people with the schedules.
Yeah, so I guess the big question is, we didn't have the bus stops cleared of snow during this morning's commute and to work and school. And is there a way that can be accomplished given the amount of staff that we have? And if not, do we have any other options of, hiring temps or something, if that's even a thing?
So we can use this past weekend as an example. Like I mentioned, the crews work 10.5-hour days both days. So we could... Herculean
effort, very much
right.
appreciated.
So we, in order to get that removed for the Monday morning would be, at 3 p.m. after they worked, 10.5 hours Sunday. When they came in at 3:30 a.m. is to keep them there longer. And I haven't gotten to Mark to ask how long it would have taken for those bus stops, but given they started today at 8:30 and finished at 2:30, it would have been another 4-6 hours for them to work. Another option, have them go home, sleep Sunday, and just come in at 2 a.m. on Monday to do that again. Again, that's, I think, a lot asking our staff, given the 9 people we have in streets and then parks, we have to be cognizant of overworking and straining them, and to have sleepy drivers out on the road, I think is a worse thing to happen than to have a bus stop maybe not shoveled for the first for the morning commute.
Alder Herbst.
I would just add our priority. We talk about the buses. We have to have the streets cleared for the buses to run. That's our number one priority. That we don't have that many. I lived in the city a long time. We haven't had that many big. 1 foot. If we get a foot snowfall storm a year, maybe we'll have several this year, but. It's a couple, it takes a day or a few days to get back to normal. That's just the fact of living in the upper Midwest. I certainly feel for the people that we had to stand stand in the street are the ones that are, aren't able to get there. But that's an unfortunate fact of where we live, and usually 2 days after it's done, that things are back to normal. It's always been the cycle. 10 hours driving the plow truck is quite a bit different than 10 hours doing anything else. You're stressed that entire time, trying not to hit parked cars, mailboxes, and that's an enduro driving that plow truck for 10, especially in the city. It's one thing maybe out on a county highway, but in the city where we're plowing, that's tough. That's tough duty. Those guys are going home. They're beat, and I think it's unfortunate, but it's one of the facts of a big storm. In a couple of days, we're back to normal.
Tim, I think you mentioned 2 parks people help out already on plowing. Can more help out, or they don't have CDLs, or the equipment? I guess maybe I'm kind of sensing the priority holistically in here is bus stops more important or less important than a trail? If they don't do a certain trail, or can they jump on that first? I'm thinking that's what I'm hearing is we have priorities that have bus stops higher than low urgent need trails or something. I don't know.
Yeah, so right now there's 11 plow routes and 2 workers from parks help out with those 11 plow routes. And the other park staff are clearing, the 3 fire stations, the soon-to-be police station, city hall, those parking lots. It is something we could discuss with the bus stops, though. With this weekend, I mean, to shovel them out, they just would have been covered right back up with a snow plow. So we'd be just redoing it. Could we have maybe put off some paths on Sunday and hit the bus stops maybe after 2:00? That's something I can discuss with parks and streets tomorrow to see if that was feasible. I do know this past weekend too, we had an issue with parks. Our toolcat had some issues, so we weren't able to get to stuff as fast either. So when equipment goes down, that also puts a strain on our resources to do it in a timely manner.
Yeah, it looked like a wonderful job. I'm just sensing what's our priorities and hierarchy. Because as soon as they plow, then I got to go back out and clean my sidewalk. So,
right.
Yeah.
And Tim, just to be clear, the public works staff does the bus stops, park staff does all the trails, right?
Correct.
So it's not like we can prioritize bus stops over trails because it's 2 separate work staff doing it?
Which is why I asked the question. If
Yeah.
they're more interchangeable, or is it a CDL thing? You can clear out a bus stop with any piece of equipment.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think what Don was trying to get at is instead of having the park staff hit maybe some trails or multi-use paths, have them hit those bus stops.
Right.
And then, streets, maybe once they're kind of finishing up the streets, have the park staff hit those stops just so they don't get recovered. Don't start too early where you're redoing it.
Right. Well, like I said earlier, once the major and minor streets are done, all the
Right.
there's no more plowing involved. And so at that point, it would be physically possible to clear bus stops. It's just a question of scheduling and workforce capacity, right?
Yeah, right. And that's something I can discuss with both our streets maintenance supervisor and our parks maintenance supervisor to see if that's something that is possible with staff. And then I can come back to the board and we can discuss that at a future board meeting if that's something we want to change in the policy, that we could, reprioritize the bus stops before the multi-use paths.
Yeah, I think, if we get the major transportation routes done, bus stops should follow before recreational trails for sure. So I guess I would like to see that in a future agenda. And Dave, maybe you can mobilize some of the Friends of Fitchburg Parks to grab their shovels and adopt a bus shelter, kind of like we have, adopt a fire extinguisher or fire hydrant.
Yeah, we might consider that. Thank you for the suggestion.
Or some of your extra older people.
Yeah, I mean.
Count on me, I'm shoveling everyone's driveway already.
All right, anything else on the topic of snow removal? All right, go ahead, Tim.
And then kind of the second part of the snow removal, just with the alternate side parking. So right now that the city has an ordinance that has winter parking restrictions, and it's section 68-212. So between November 15th and March 15th, no person may park, stop, or leave standing any vehicle between the hours of 1 a.m. and 7 a.m. on the even-numbered side of the street on odd-number calendar days, and then on the odd-number side of the street on even-number calendar days. So I guess a resident had reached out to Alder Jetzer, just kind of wondering, I believe Madison kind of pushed back it used to be November 15th, and now it's the first snowfall. And if that's something that the city of Fitchburg has considered. So with this past event, if we did say we started at December 1st, we
Yeah, I think probably the idea would be when there's a forecast calling for snow, there would be some banner on the city's website or send out a notify me message, whatever, saying, hey, it's going to be in effect on this particular day. Rather than, we don't usually get a lot of snow before November 15th, but we sometimes have significant snowfall after March 15th. So, having the ability to kind of tailor it to the actual weather rather than the calendar. I feel like I'm having an argument with the family about the thermostat. It doesn't come on till November 1st.
And what's interesting too, the once that email came in and the more we dived into it, there's another part of the city's ordinance. There's snow and ice emergency regulations, so that the police chief can call for emergency snow parking restrictions during a snow event. And basically you would park from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. on one side, and then that last half of the day would be the other side of the street, and the duration is contingent upon the storm. So I asked Mark if he was aware of that, and he can't recall any time the city's ever enacted that. So Ross also looked at other municipalities, and the city of Stoughton is the only one that kind of utilizes that. Otherwise, most of the other cities, Verona, Sun Prairie, Middleton, Madison, they have the alternate side parking for the either November 15th, December 1st till mid-March to end of March. To tell you the truth too is very rarely are we coming in at 1 a.m. to, remove snow from where people have parked. It's kind of what I told you earlier is it's 6:30 a.m. We'll hit the streets, and that half hour try to hit those areas quick. It's not the entire time. But I think that the city kind of did it just to be consistent, because if you start switching the dates, one, how do you notify 35,000 people can be difficult, and two, just that consistency, you get people more aware and more able to follow along with that.
Well, kudos to whoever reached with the local media, because they mentioned Fitchburg's restrictions in it. So either the media reached out to someone here or police, and they told them restrictions, because then the media channels, they were telling what Fitchburg is, what's Madison's, what's Verona's, and so that's a perfect way to attack it.
Did you happen to look at, I guess, whether, first of all, if there is no impending snowstorm or any snowfall at all, does the city regularly enforce the alternate side parking?
Which city, Madison or?
Fitchburg.
Fitchburg.
So like if somebody parks on the wrong side of the street, but it's, you know, the overnight low is 45, do we hand out tickets just so that people get used to the alternate side parking, or do we say, well, no harm, no foul?
I have not. For this exercise, I did not check with the police. I talked to Ross a little bit about it, and Ned, our old, I believe he was deputy chief, and he would go out kind of once November 15th hit, and they would hand out warnings. Okay. Is what he told us. I don't know if I haven't, like I mentioned, confirmed if the police did do that this year. I spoke to Mark today, and they did see tickets on vehicles on Saturday when they were plowing. So whether the police did that, you know, Friday night or early Saturday morning when we were out at 9:30 a.m. and after, we plow drivers saw tickets.
Tim, you mentioned you were going to put laptops like the leaf pickers. What's the game plan, or when's the strategy to put those on? Because they could ping those real easy.
Yeah, so that's a great point. And with the iPads and the snowplow trucks, we were looking to probably next snow season. It's just something we didn't budget for, and one, we wanted to kind of get the street sweeper up and running first and work out all the kinks, and then it's easy to kind of implement something like that. But no, I mean, that's a great point. So when we are out plowing, you know, maybe that's something we can share with the police to help, you know, either give a warning or a ticket and get those vehicles removed so we can finish plowing.
It sounds like they could buy them for you now after they hit a few cars.
Right. All right, any other questions? Or Tim, did you have more of an update?
No, that's it for my update.
Okay, any other questions for Tim? Okay, we can move on to our action items here. Moving on to agenda item 6A, looking for a motion to approve resolution R22025, granting an underground electric easement on lot 20 in the second addition to Fitchburg Research Park for the police services facility.
I'll move approval.
I'll second it. I'll second it.
All right. Tim, do you want to tell us what this is about?
Absolutely. The city of Fitchburg is constructing the police services facility on lot 20 in the plat of second addition to Research Park. Electric service is needed for this facility. An easement is needed for Madison Gas and Electric to install the electric service for this facility. So we're looking for council to approve granting an underground electric easement on lot 20 in the plat of second addition to Research Park for the police services facilities to Madison Gas and Electric Company.
We have any discussion? I had a question. So this is an underground easement. Does that mean we're free to build whatever we want on top of that, or do we need to keep the surface clean for MG&E?
The surface will need to be kept clean for MG&E.
Okay. And that's been taken into account in the design of the facility?
Yes.
Okay. Any further discussion? Otherwise, I'll call the vote. All in favor of resolution R22025, signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. It is unanimous. Moving on to 6B, Looking for a motion to approve Resolution R23525, supporting the STBGTA grant application for the Traceway and Post Road Path.
I motion R23525.
We have a motion.
Second that.
Thank you, Dave. Tim?
So the Leopold Elementary School and the Hub are high-volume pedestrian destinations within the city. The city of Fitchburg wishes to have safe, efficient pedestrian and bicycle access to parks and schools. So the Wisconsin Department of Transportation and the Greater Madison MPO provide funding for pedestrian and bicycle projects through the Surface Transportation Block Grant Transportation Alternatives Program, acronym STBG-TA. So we're looking for council to support the grant application for the Traceway and Post Road Path project.
Tim, do we have a game plan where we want to go after all these, and are we limited to so much grant money?
So the city isn't limited to grant money for this program. So it, I believe, comes out once a year or it's every other year. And last year we got the Highway MM, the boardwalk path for that, and then previously the underpass project on MM2 for the bicycle. So last 3 years we've gotten grant money for this.
Do we have a game plan for the whole city where we want to apply for these? I have nothing against this one. The next one that comes along, was it in our game plan?
Yeah, the game plan's the capital improvement plan. So all three projects were listed in the capital improvement plan, which gets updated every year, and it's a 10-year plan. So typically last 3 years since I've been here, we've been picking a project out of the plan and submitting, depending kind of on the timelines. We've had to shift stuff. So once the funding becomes available, like for this particular project, right now it's listed for design in 2027 and construction for 2028 in the city's CIP plan. However, funding's not available till 2030. So the MPO said, hey, we can give you funding. Do you mind doing this project 2 years later? Which we didn't have an issue with. So kind of we adjust depending on when the funding is, but the plan is dictated by the capital improvement plan.
And just to note, the MPO Policy Board did approve this funding, but it's contingent upon the city passing a resolution in support, so that's what this is.
Correct. And then also Wisconsin Department of Transportation still needs to sign off on it. So once that happens, they typically go with the MPO's recommendation. So once WisDOT signs off on it, we'd execute a state municipal agreement, most likely in 2026. So we'd bring forward a resolution to execute that agreement for this project.
Tim, do we not have sidewalks on Traceway and Post Road?
We do have sidewalks on Post Road. It's on the north side of the street, so this sidewalk would be on the south side.
Okay.
And this,
you don't have to cross the street, is what you're.
and this bike or multi-use path will connect the one along Fish Hatchery Road with the Cannonball Trail on the west.
Yes, here's kind of the map. Let me just pull it up for showing the project limits. So connect on Fish Hatchery Road, head west on Traceway Drive. So Dave, there is sidewalk along there. However, it's only 5 feet wide, so we'd replace it with a 10-foot wide multi-use path. And then we'd also look to do a kind of a raised pedestrian crosswalk connecting the hub to the other side of Traceway Drive too. And then on Post Road, this would go on the south side of Post Road and connect. With Madison, we would coordinate kind of connection to the Cannonball Path. So we'd take it to the city limits. We've already reached out to Madison to kind of fill that gap, that sidewalk that falls within their limits from our end of our path to the Cannonball Path. They said they would construct that.
It'd be nice to get that tied to the Cannonball completed.
Yes. And the city of Madison is on board with that.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll also note that along Traceway in front of the new hub, there's the sidewalk that was put in there was 10 feet wide.
Yes.
And that's concrete, not asphalt.
Correct. So kind of to the west and east, we wouldn't remove
path.
the new hub sidewalk, just what's existing to the east and west.
And then I presume there would be a yellow line down the middle, or maybe not. I don't know. But if there was, we would just, we would have asphalt with a section of concrete in the middle of it.
Correct.
And the raised crossing at the hub and at Leopold School, what about crossing Traceway at Post Road? That intersection with Post and Traceway.
We did not talk about a raised crosswalk there. It's something we could look into. So I can discuss that with Ross.
I would think there wouldn't be a whole lot of objection there. I don't know that I don't know how much traffic there is through that intersection there. Basically Traceway is the High Line and the golf course. Any further discussion? Okay, I will call the vote. All in favor of Resolution R23525 signify by saying aye.
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 It is again unanimous. Moving on to 6C, looking for a motion to approve Resolution R21725, amending the 2026 General Fund Budget, Finance Specialist and Limited Term Employment Building Inspector hours from vacant code enforcement position and reduced planning intern hours.
I so move to approve Resolution R-217-25.
Second.
Great. Tim, walk us through this.
The 2023 Baker Tilly Operational and Organizational Review identified the need for additional centralized procurement support to benefit multiple city departments, as well as the need for additional budget support. The failure of the November 2024 levy limit referendum requires the city to reconsider the overall efficiency and prioritization of the limited funds available. Removing a vacant full-time code enforcement position within the building inspection department and reducing the number of intern hours in the planning department would allow for the addition of a full-time finance specialist, procurement/budget position, and an LTE building inspector. The proposed staffing changes are property tax neutral, and the increased cost in non-property tax funding within other funds can be absorbed in the 2026 budget before the costs are added to the rates in future years. This change in staffing levels represents a better overall prioritization of the city's limited available funding. So we're looking for council to authorize the change in employee staffing levels as shown on the attached staff memo. Then also looking for council to amend the 2026 budget in the various funds as shown on the attached supporting document.
Just from my education, I have nothing against this. It's just, why does it have to go through council and stuff? Doesn't Tim just have the authority? I got a vacancy here. I want to shift it to this position, and
The budget amendment is one of the reasons. And then also the personnel committee, I believe this went to. So it does go to personnel, and then public works, just because the funding, some of the funding for the position is coming from the utilities. So water, sewer, stormwater, refuge, recycling, and then also public works and parks, now that it falls under public works. But yeah, it does need council approval.
Okay.
Alder Herbst.
I'm going to vote no, just so you know, the code person, you know, that is vacant is the one that cleaned up my neighborhood, and he would stay on top of trash and things in Allied Drive, and but not having that will affect my District 1 more than any place in the city, you know. So I understand the constraints, but I'm also an advocate of the broken windows, and that code enforcement person, you know, really made a big difference in District 1, you know, until he resigned.
I was going to ask about that. So the LTE building inspector, is that going to be, that's 400 hours. That's basically 20% time. Is that going to be code enforcement?
I believe it's going to be inspection services. I believe the code enforcement falls under the new person that they hired about a month ago.
So they did hire someone to replace Gabe?
Yes, Jada is her name, and I believe she started a little over a month ago, end of October.
All right, I'm sorry. I'm not paying attention. I didn't realize that. Okay. I withdraw my objection.
So how do we have a vacant code enforcement position if we hired somebody to replace Gage?
So John Crook had retired, and then Paul moved from his building inspector into John's position, and then Gabe had resigned, so that there was those two open positions. Jada came in, filled one of those positions, and then the others being converted into this. So I believe that Jada's responsibilities also included some of Gabe's.
Okay. Anybody have any additional questions? All right, I'll call the vote. All in favor of Resolution R 21725 signify by saying aye.
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 It is unanimous. Moving on, looking for a motion to approve Resolution R 23125, amendment to the final assessment amounts for the 2024 sidewalk replacement.
Motion to approve R 23125. You can give it.
I'll second that motion.
All right. Tim?
There was a clerical error in the 2024 sidewalk assessment report that was not caught until a resident received their bill. Any adjustments to the approved assessment amounts need to be approved by council. So the edited Exhibit A has been attached with the affected parcel highlighted in yellow. A single square of sidewalk replacement was incorrectly assigned to the parcel to the north. So after that parcel received the bill, the resident had reached out to staff to let them know the sidewalk replacement was actually to the parcel to the south. So then we had to remove that parcel to the north and add the parcel to the south. And here's Exhibit A. So what's highlighted here in yellow is what, that's the new parcel getting charged, which is the $180.50.
Pretty straightforward. Any questions, discussion? All right, all in favor of Resolution R 23125 signify by saying aye.
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 It is again unanimous. Moving on to 6E. Looking for a motion to approve Resolution R 22825, authorizing rejection of the police services facility audio-video bid.
I so move we approve resolution R-228-25.
Second.
Okay. Tim, what's the bad news?
The new police services facility will need an audio-video system. FGM Architects prepared plans and specifications for the installation and implementation of an audio-video system for the new facility. The project was advertised by legal notice in October 30th, 2025 and November 6th, 2025, and bids were due on November 13th, 2025. On November 13th, one online bid was received from Fairings Audio Video in the amount of $503,706.78. The bid received was more than the $250,000 budgeted for this project. So staff's recommendation is to reject the bid and rebid the project in January 2026. So we're looking for council to reject the bid received for the police services facility audio video system, and then looking for council to also authorize staff to rebid the project.
Tim, it was darn near double. Rebidding it or getting more competition is going to do it. Are you going to, or rebidding it in a good time of year, or just getting new competition? Is
Yeah,
that
I
what
think
we're banking
new
on?
competition's the important thing. Just having one bid twice as much as what you budgeted is, something we don't want to accept.
Mm-hmm. And then I just had you had an alternative bid in there. What was that?
I could take a look.
Add dedicated something, but the text is cut off.
Yeah.
It's not that critical. It's fine.
I'm almost there.
Okay.
Sorry.
I just thought maybe it's someone with a megaphone at the front door yelling something out.
Let's see what they have listed. Looks like social work 104 and patrol meeting 168 to receive Logitech system as an alternate. So it looks like two of the rooms, the patrol meeting room and the social work is looking to potentially get a Logitech's a company. I'm not quite sure what the exact system does. So
Okay. And Tim, I just have to ask, just because the estimate, the bid came in twice the estimate. That estimate was not just a number that somebody pulled out of the air and wrote down. I mean, there's some thinking went into that number, right?
Some thinking went into that number. So that's kind of when they came in at 503,000. Just with one bidder, that's the same thing we kind of wondered. So
I'm not familiar with, Fairings. Obviously, I've heard of. I don't know the companies that do this type of work. There must be more. I don't know if that's something that Full Compass would bid on, or I'm hoping there's more, more vendors for this type of thing. Fearing we hear them advertised on TV and things, but hopefully we find some other people interested.
Yeah, there's definitely other companies out there, and I believe the architect on past projects was going to reach out to some of the vendors and, just kind of let them know that this solicitation is out there come January 2026.
Okay.
All right. Any other discussion? If not, I will take this to a vote. All in favor of Resolution R 22825 signify by saying aye.
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 It is again unanimous. Moving on to item 7A, announcements. The next Board of Public Works meeting is Monday, December 15th. Same time, same place. And I guess I'll just have one additional announcement here. I'm getting reports that somebody brought their 6-year-old to the hub on Traceway, where she played for 2.5 hours, and then when they went home, she said, "Hey, next time we go there, I want to bring a tent because I would like to live there." So, kudos to
It come out just beautiful. didn't it?
everyone involved with the construction of the hub. People seem to love it. All right, moving on to item number 8, adjournment. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I so move we adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, all in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right, we are adjourned at 6:55 p.m.